Bayard Rustin was an inspiring civil rights activist whose life story was documented through the Netflix film, Rustin. The film was produced by Higher Ground Productions, which is Barack and Michelle Obama's company. The company's central focus is to create content that elevates new and diverse voices in entertainment, while entertaining, inspiring, and informing audiences of all different ages and backgrounds. This mission certainly came to fruition in the case of Rustin, which serves as a reminder of the power of courage and advocacy. Bayard Rustin is portrayed by the talented Colman Domingo, who took pride in getting to tell the story of a historical figure who was far too often sidelined. Rustin superficially focuses on the activists' efforts to organize the 1963 March on Washington, as well as the racism and homophobia he faced in his quest for equality. Though the film does a good job of sharing Rustin's story, it could not include all of the details of his real life, many of which are crucial to fully understand his journey and contributions. Bayard Rustin's early life and how he became a civil rights activist. Colman Domingo wearing a suit and glasses as Bayard Rustin at the Lincoln Memorial in the movie Rustin. Bayard Rustin was born in 1912 in West Chester, Pennsylvania to Florence Rustin and Archie Hopkins. He was the ninth of 12 children, and was raised by his maternal grandparents. His grandmother's Quaker faith is actually what ultimately inspired him to pursue a life of activism. He recognized that his grandmother's Quaker beliefs were rooted in peace and equality, which were ideals he carried and fought for throughout his life. She was also a member of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, which served as another influence for a young Rustin. Upon finishing high school, Rustin took on odd jobs, traveled across the world, and spent 5 years at various colleges. During his time as a student at City College of New York in the 1930s, Rustin ended up joining the Young Communist League, according to Stanford's the Martin Luther King, Jr. Research and Education Institute. He departed the organization when its emphasis shifted away from civil rights activity in 1941, and shortly after, he was appointed the young organizer of the 1941 March on Washington. At this time, he also joined the Fellowship of Reconciliation and co-founded the Congress of Racial Equality. Bayard Rustin's role in the March on Washington, Indiana 1963 explained. Rustin March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Rustin was the main organizer for the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. He had less than 2 months to put the event together, and it ended up being the largest public demonstration the United States had ever seen. There were 250,000 people in attendance, and this was where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. The goal of the march was to put pressure on the government, as well as other groups who Rustin believed should serve as allies. According to NPR, a volunteer for the march described Rustin as kind and immensely talented. She explained how he worked to create the march from the ground up. His vision for it was unprecedented, as there had been marches in the South but never one that called on people from all over the country. How Bayard Rustin influenced Martin Luther King Jr. Rustin Martin Luther King Jr. I Have a Dream speech. Stanford's the Martin Luther King, Jr. Research and Education Institute explains that Rustin played a key role in Martin Luther King Jr.'s advocacy and impact on the United States. Rustin was able to provide King with a thorough understanding of nonviolent ideas and tactics. It was reported that prior to working with Rustin, King was only academically familiar with Rustin. King was able to recognize the power in Rustin's knowledge, teachings, contacts, and abilities. He asked Rustin to be his advisor, though he knew that Rustin's background could be controversial to other people in the civil rights space. Though not often credited, Rustin played a major role in Martin Luther King's journey. He wore many hats, including serving as King's proofreader, ghostwriter, philosophy teacher, and strategist. Rustin also was the catalyst of the formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that King started. This group united black leaders in the South and played a key part in the Selma voting rights campaign and march to Montgomery in 1965. In addition, Rustin helped draft a good amount of King's memoir called Stride Toward Freedom, though he requested for his name not to be credited on the book in order to save King from the burden of being associated with him. How being gay affected Bayard Rustin's role as an activist. Bayard Rustin planning March on Washington in Rustin. The reason Rustin often stayed in behind-the-scenes work and was hesitant to not have King associated with him through his book was because of his sexuality. Rustin was a gay man who faced intense criticism over his sexuality. In 1958, he was found having sex with 2 men in a parked car and was arrested on moral charges and charged as a sex offender. When he organized the March on Washington in 1963, there was pushback from civil rights activists who tried to discredit the march. Despite the controversy that surrounded him and his sexuality, Rustin refused to hide his sexuality. In fact, in the 1980s, Rustin became a public advocate on behalf of gay causes. Bayard Rustin's role in unions and workers' rights explained. Throughout his activism career, Rustin served as a champion of union and workers' rights. 1965, him and his mentor, A. Philip Randolph, co-founded the A. Philip Randolph Institute. This was a labor organization dedicated to African American trade union members. Rustin served alongside Randolph to integrate and promote unions among African Americans until Randolph's death in 1979. Bayard Rustin's death and posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom explained. Bayard Rustin Colman Domingo. Bayard Rustin passed away from a ruptured appendix on August 24, 1987 at the age of 75. On November 20, 2013, President Barack Obama posthumously awarded Rustin with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Obama held a ceremony in the East Room of the West Wing, and Rustin's partner, Walter Nagel, accepted the award on Rustin's behalf.